3000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by an individual.
That's it.
Discourse. Henry, thanks for coming, man.
Oh, my pleasure, Maloney. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. We've had a good little initial chat off camera, which it made me think we should just start pushing record. So we're going to jump right in, man.
Yeah, just get stuck in.
That's it. All right. So you're obviously involved with the record company stuff, but tell us how a young Henry from Melbourne got involved and got to the stage of where you are in this crazy Aussie hip hop scene.
Well, coming up when I was young, I had cousins that lived in Castlemaine, and that was my foray into hip hop music. They always used to listen to Wu-Tang and Rage Against the Machine and stuff. Whilst I'd go there and they'd be painting the house, and I was blown away that their parents would listen to them, let them listen to such like crazy music.
Yeah.
And as time went on, they started making music. And they took me to record stores when I was younger, like Obese, when we were just hanging out or whatever, when they visited Melbourne, introduced me to like local music. And, seeing people locally do this sort of thing made it so much more relatable, obviously.
Yeah.
And seeing my cousins make it just on their family computer at home, cutting and pasting CDs up that they rented from the library in Acid Pro 2.0 or whatever it was.
I had that, yeah. Sony Acid.
Oh, man, it was good, man. There was like some great features in it. But, and the logic of it was it made sense to me and made it, like sampling and stuff, made it accessible.
Yep. So how old are you at this stage when they sort of introduced you to it?
So I was probably maybe like 14, 15 years old, maybe.
And before that, you're just into like sort of commercial music, rock music, whatever?
Oh, around the grade 6, grade 7 time, probably fringe sort of stuff. I had some friends that were into some harder rock sort of stuff. Like, had a friend down the street. He was like really into like Korn and Fear Factory and all that.
Was huge at that.
Yeah, all that Roadrunner record stuff. But, once the hip-hop thing sort of came in, I was, like, really into it.
Yeah, sure. And so from a local perspective, who are they introducing you to when they take you to Union Heights? Oh, sorry.
Obese.
That's Obese, sorry.
Freudian slip.
It was a little bit, sorry.
The craziest thing for me was there was a group called Battletown at the time. So there was a CD by the group called The Phonetics. And like they all rapped in American accents and stuff, and to me at the time, it just sounded like Dilated Peoples. So so the transition from understanding that they were local into more Australian accented stuff was sort of like a bit of a gateway.
Yeah.
And Weapon X, who featured on that, he like worked around the corner from Obese at the Nike store, and so being able to like go in there and annoy him, and he was always like super respectful and willing to talk to me. I'd go in there in my school uniform and ask him questions and stuff. It was probably mad annoying for his boss, but yeah.
Yeah, that's Sports Lords.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. But yeah, he was always such a legend, man. I appreciate all the guys and being tolerating of the young annoying kid.
Man, it seems to be a bit of a constant theme on this show that people talk about. I used to be that annoying kid, and now people annoy me, so it goes full circle.
Look, I've definitely learned not to be like, to accept like the enthusiasm of youth, man. They're younger, hungrier, and, we'll learn from all your mistakes so much faster than you ever did.
For sure. But I think it's really important with the youth to be respectful and understand where their genre or where their art form, subculture comes from. Because what I start to see now, and this is because but I think some people just get involved in some sort of subculture, don't really see where it's come from, and they only care about where it's going. And I think that's the wrong mentality.
I think it is important for people to understand where it came from, but you also just can't like force this like history down their throats either. You can't like hold them and make them listen to a Public Enemy record and be like, you have to understand this before you can appreciate where it got.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like this toxic. There's a lot of toxic traits, especially in hip hop. About like respect is a two-way street, and I wouldn't have been excited about it, learning about any of these things, if I hadn't had my inroads at the time, which was like late 90s, early 2000s rap. You couldn't have sent me straight to like Curtis Blow, man.
Which is, I know, but I think the positive thing about it is when someone is really passionate about something, they want to learn. And that, I think, is the sad thing that some people miss out on. They only look forward, and you want to appreciate the history of something, because then you can kind of, I guess, see where it's going better. That's my take.
No, I agree. I totally agree. I'm just like there's definitely this like mentality that like the golden era is like the place to be, man. And it creates a rift amongst people, and then people get really upset that they, it's like, but the older people don't respect the newer stuff. How do you expect the newer generation to respect the older generation if it's not reciprocal?
Yeah.
And I think that's been a very hard thing for people to navigate, and it's created alternate scenes to a degree.
For sure. And I think people all have their own idea of what the halcyon days of whatever subculture is. You know what I mean? And it's generally when those people are kind of in the prime of their lives, they go, or the prime of their excitement for some sort of fucking thing.
Well, I definitely found that I held on to a lot of the people who inspired me, a lot of their traits, and because it's what molded me and what made me like the passionate person that I was at the time. But I had a bit of a like moment where I recognized that I was really just like championing these ideologies that I gathered from people growing up, and it was not actually a healthy approach to growth and to understanding of the future.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a narrow-minded approach.
100%. You need to sample vinyl. You need to like
have this MPC.
Yeah, well, I had like all the old MPCs at one point, and it was actually very limiting. Like I was like struggling with these like 12-bit samplers and zip disks, and it was like actually interfering in my growth and learning and development of trying to achieve what I wanted to do. Yep. And the moment that I sort of like learned a bit more about where I was going to go with that, like worlds opened up, and some of the more modern techniques really taught me a lot about music theory, and it was just heaps easier to actually achieve what I wanted to achieve.
For sure. I think that there is definitely some awesome like qualities with being limited to what you can use to create something, because it makes people potentially dig deeper into that stuff. But if you've got technology in your hands, why not make the most of it?
I'm super into like vintage technologies, man. It's like, it's amazing, like I love old synths and like mechanical keyboards and stuff.
Yeah.
But definitely moving towards the more modern samplers and like modern software, it only allows me to like understand and work with those things better.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then you can understand where those things have come from, and that makes total sense.
Totally.
So same as the journey.
One of the biggest things for me was scales and chords mode on all these modern programs. I'm not like super musical person in terms of, I've never been able to play an instrument or keyboards or anything. If anything, I thought I was a bit stupid growing up, because I was always sampling from the turntable, but I was pitching it before I would sample, because it's like, oh, that sounds dope in that spot, I'll sample that bit. But it was actually shifting all of my samples out of key, which meant that nothing I could ever play was going to be in key with what I was sampling. And so for years, my techniques were interfering with me growing and getting better at playing with them.
Yeah.
And
but digitally, you don't have that, because you can hold the pitch, shift
or shift in semitones, which keeps it in lock. But scales and chords mode allowed me to work out the key of the sample, and then it would eliminate all of the wrong notes. And it felt like I was just like a genius.
It's interesting though, like how music is so free and open, but there is so many rules in the key. You know what I mean? Like hip hop doesn't necessarily, it doesn't have to be in key, but it helps.
Well, like the dissonance of having things that are mashed together when they're not in key make things less palatable to listen to. Obviously, the further out they are, the more sort of clashing and upsetting for your brain.
Jarring,
Yeah. So I mean, obviously art is subjective and noise art and whatever, but I would definitely say that I like to keep things in key. That's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's get back onto your personal journey. Your cousins are showing you around obese. You're doing your whole thing, annoying the dude at sports lords. You're privy to local hip hop. So where does your journey take you from there, man?
Well, the moment that obese was sort of into the thing, and I was witnessing people like Muff working behind the counter and Pegs and Bias and stuff, you know, and I could see that the artist was working there and the CDs that they made were available to buy in there. It became all very real, you know, and I just used to go in there every single day. I used to catch the 72 home, which was just down Commercial Road, and Ozette Street was right there, and I'd just waddle in there about, you know, 3:45 or something. And
with all the other kids in their blazers?
Oh, well, I was just going in there on my own, you know, like, and nobody seemed to think it was as cool as I did. Yeah, I'd just go in there and I'd stay till they closed. And the moment I started making beats, I'd go in there and play them every beat that I ever made. And I think it got to the point where Bias was like, yo, you don't have to play me every single beat that you make. Just play me the best one that you made during the week, you know?
And you're sampling there?
Yeah, I mean, sampling at that time was like the only thing I was able to really do. It was.
So you're digging through records at the op shop, or whatever your family's got at home, or what?
I think it started off me mimicking my cousins, and I'd borrow CDs from the library. Yeah, CDs. Because I didn't have a turntable yet, so I had to save money, and I think I worked at McDonald's at the time or something, you know. Like.
And even with the CDs, I'm guessing, unless you can't change the pitch on the CD.
Oh, you definitely could. So once you'd sampled it in,
then you could change it.
Yeah, so you just like rip the whole song off.
Okay.
As a WAV file, and then I think I dropped it into Acid Pro, and you'd slice it up, and I think the plus and minus buttons would pitch each one up. Yep. But yeah. And
then where are you getting your drums from and doing a similar thing?
I can't even remember. We probably had like a drum kit at some point, or probably had some breaks or something. But I mean, yeah, it's quite a long time ago.
But you've got him to the point where you're like, this is fire. I'm going to take this in, show Bias at Obese, and he's going to be fucking all over.
Oh, look, you know, I was just G'd up to be doing anything really, you know, like at that time, you know, I'd just come home from school and couldn't wait to do it again the next day, really, you know. School was just something that happened in between.
It got in the way, yeah. So, and you thinking, like, all right, who's going to rap on these beats, or what am I going to do with them? You just happy to make it.
Oh, we were rapping and trying to do stuff and, you know, record whatever. You know, it was all awful. Yeah, it was, you know, but, you know, you have to, like, go through the process. And I've always not been very fearful of technology. We always had a computer in the house. Mm-hmm. I never realized how much of a leg up that gave me on all of this sort of stuff was, you know, being in, like, mid-90s and having a computer at home was like, not everybody had that. Yeah. You know? So, not only did I have a computer in the house, my dad taught me how to just maintain it, you know, what all the bits did and how they fitted together. You know, I mean, it's very like standard nowadays, but in the 90s, it's like pretty foreign to most people.
For sure.
So like I had the grasp of all the software and stuff was pretty second nature to me at that time, you know, same with like any sort of like creative software visually as well, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and at school and stuff, we learned all that stuff and I'd just go home and want to learn more.
Yeah, and apply what you're learning there to the stuff that you like.
We never really did much music stuff at school. There was a bit, you know, I think at that time, digital music was still very much it was still very early for it to be widely adopted, you know?
Yeah.
I know like in studios and stuff, they probably would have had like early Pro Tools setups and so forth. But like, I think a lot of the audio.
But it was a good time, I guess, for a young person to start to, you know, make music, because prior to that 90s, you would have needed a drum machine, you would have needed a sampler, you know what I mean? When you could do it within the software with like Acid.
Well, I just heard all my favorite artists at the time, like Lazy was always rapping about chopping beats on an MPC, you know, and I just wanted to know what that was about. And then, and it wasn't just Obese that I'd hang out. This Is It opened, and I used to go in there and annoy Dom and stuff, you know. And these were all like very encouraging figures in my life, you know, that made everything feel like it was actually possible. All these places were releasing CDs and records independently, and like sort of like learning the ropes via osmosis, you know, just by being around and watching them do it. But with the NPC thing, it was Orcs One or Tim from Wax Museum.
Yep.
Somehow I ended up hanging around with them heaps at one point, and he upgraded to the 1000 and had these 2000 just sitting there, and I was fascinated by it. He let me borrow it and eventually sold it to me, like, and it took him ages to pay it back, and he probably was like mad annoyed by me or whatever, but you know, I'm forever grateful that he did that to me, you know.
You still got that NPC?
I actually just sold it in a bucket of bits to DJ Pierre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because
down this way.
Yeah. He's a bit of a whiz with fixing things. I think he's got it up and running again.
Really?
But, I definitely was like, had the intention of fixing it, but I had to let some things go, man.
I wouldn't even know what would be inside. I wouldn't even, I'm like, what?
Well, normally it's always like the tack switches usually that go, you know, especially the shift buttons on those things.
Yeah.
Once they started moving their units to being manufactured in China from the 3000 to the 4000, they reduced the number of buttons that they wanted to put on it. So, and trying to make the units cheaper. So if you put like all the functions under shift button, it doubles the amount of opportunities to do, but it means that you push the same button over and over and over and over and over again, which means they wear out faster. So things like that often
perishable parts. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you got your NPC, and now you're starting to take it a little bit more seriously.
I'm a pretty serious guy when I do it, I think, man.
Focused.
Yeah. Obsessive.
Yeah. A lot of people are with this sort of craft, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, like I pulled my wardrobe out from the wall and lined it with carpet and had my friends coming around trying to rap in the booth that I made at home and stuff. You know, none of it ever really like materialized into anything, but, you know, it was like all good practice, you know?
Yeah. And then from there you think, okay, I'm seeing other people make music, do it the way that they want to do it. I've got the facilities to do it, but then you need to learn a bit more about it, and you need to partner up with the right people.
Well, I found that I had more of a knack in the organizing and, you know, like doing design and marketing of music, and my skill in that area developed much faster than my skill in actually making music. So,
and it makes you valuable to other artists then.
Well, that's what happened is I got in with from going to see Dom at This Is It. He introduced me to Prowler, and they were running Nuffset at the time, and they asked me to do a bunch of cover artwork for them.
Yep.
So some vinyl sleeves and CDs. And it's because they
must have been cool though.
Oh,
for a young
16-year-old Henry, you know, I was like, oh man, this is like a dream come true. And then that introduced me to a lot more musical artists as a result of doing that. So all the people that they were working with, which was how I got in with a lot of the people who were on Crate Cartel, which was Raven was on that record, and a bunch of other friends of mine from the western suburbs were also on there. So there was a crew called the Cheapskates.
Yep.
Which is like Vornographic and Methods and a bunch of other people. So like all the people that I was working with at the time, there was a lot of introductions there, and it made the city become a lot more accessible, you know?
Connected.
Yeah.
So the Nuff Said stuff, were you involved with the RDC book?
No, that came before. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I had a copy of that and I can't find it. My mate brought it around the other day. It's like classic. People are selling that for like $400.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me, man. I don't think there's that many of them around, you know? I have the record. I don't have the book.
Okay.
But, you know, like I heard all sorts of stories about like all that era, you know, like how they were just trying to figure things out too, you know? Like I think like Lone Wolf, which came around at the time, he was telling me about how it was the first time they were using like Fruity Loops on albums and stuff, you know, and just like the issues they were having exporting it. The RDC record, I don't know if you have the record.
I don't have the record, but I know it,
The inner sleeve on RDC hangs out of the outer sleeve, which like is the most, they had this term deadies, which was like anytime something didn't work, it was deadies. Anyway, but it was because they cut the sleeves a little bit too short, and as opposed to them reprinting the sleeves, they printed inner sleeves for them, but they made it so that the inner sleeve connects with the outer sleeve design. So it's kind of cool and unique in its own way, you know. So out of a flaw came something fresh. But
for sure,
all those little stories, you know, I think are a really cool insight when I was working for them.
For sure. And then you're obviously younger, but they've already got a bit of a heritage. So you're like, okay, I'm young here, and I can be hungry and I can help these people. You know, that opens up a whole new sort of avenue for you as well.
Well, the whole like Photoshop era was like really not accessible to most people at the time. You know, you'd have to pay a graphic designer heaps of money really to get in, and so I was just this kid that they could pay not heaps of money, and I was really excited to do it, you know. So like it really gave me a lot of avenues in. Yeah, for
sure. Because I guess a lot of people are just thinking about making the music or making the art, and they're not thinking about the full design or the overall. I'm guessing some artists are, but others are like, this, we just make the music, we need you to sort out the visual side of it.
They cared about it a lot, but you know, it was really a grassroots movement what they were doing. They did everything themselves, you know, which definitely instilled a lot of like that DIY mentality, which I think I have, you know, which to my benefit and other side, it means that everything takes so long to do because I'm just like so hands-on with everything. But you know, I take immense pride in like being able to see everything across all the different mediums. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, and that is something now that, you know, with the internet age is extremely important. You can't just do one aspect of it. You've got to do it all. You've got to have the visuals. You've got to have the, you know, the cinema sort of stuff that goes with the physical copies. It's all one and the same.
Yeah, but the whole content, as we were talking about before, the whole content generation thing is like really taxing on the modern day artist too. So it's like, where do you draw the line between art and content? It's like, I think that's the big issue of this moment in time is like, you know, people digest the content so much faster than people can make it. It's like,
I'm seeing that happen a lot now. Like, you know, with some people that are content creators, they try and fucking shoehorn that into some sort of a business, and it comes across as really fake. You know what I mean? Like, you see these people who are like, might have 1 million followers on TikTok, and they're like, oh, now I'm going to do some thing. You're like, man, just because you went viral doesn't mean all of a sudden you have some sort of thing to offer. You know? Oh
man, and the other side of it is watching people who work in like a creative industry trying to find the formula to get something viral. You know, like my job outside of doing music is ultimately, as much as I hate to admit it, is creating content for brands and stuff. And, you know, I've got like the people that work at the brands asking me, we need to like get 5 million views like this dog wearing a Superman outfit. It's like, I don't know how you think I'm going to shoehorn your product into this viral video, but if I could, I would be getting paid a lot more and working somewhere else if I could.
But it's like those things, I'm sure people do contrive them, and they do happen from time to time. You'd be talking tens of millions to one. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like if the guy riding the skateboard, listening to Fleetwood Mac, drinking the Ocean Spray juice, if that was Ocean Spray, if they came up with it, amazing. But I don't think they did. It was just a happy accident.
That being said, I do think that people do have advertising campaigns that they do this sort of stuff. I think it happens far more than what we would like to acknowledge.
Yep.
You know, like I don't think that you know, Drake sitting on this tower, that views thing, which became memes and all sorts of stuff. I would bet money that there is an advertising campaign behind that, which is...
The thing is with all this sort of stuff, this virality, marketing, whatever you want to call it, the social media platforms keep moving the goalposts. So even if someone does figure it out, I think it's going to change slightly soon, you know?
Evolution in any capacity, it just happens way faster now than it ever used to, you know?
Yeah, I think with memes in general, they sort of start on the deeper parts of the internet, and slowly, by the time they've made it to Facebook and Instagram, they're yeah.
For sure, it's where the 4chan's where it starts, and that, I mean, you know, that whole thing. But I definitely think like at the core of it, it's essentially like creating controversial media, right? Like Jay-Z and Beyonce, like, or Jay-Z getting beat up by Solange in the elevator, right? That's probably like the most wild thing that went viral and publicized Solange's career. I mean, Solange is awesome. I love her music and stuff, but I had no idea who Solange was before she fucking beat up Jay-Z in an elevator.
Yep.
Man, you know, and then the rest of the records is history, you know. Take a seat to the table, bang it. You know?
For sure, there's definitely people, but there's nothing worse than spotting and sniffing out some poor, feeble attempt for someone to go viral, you know?
Oh, yeah.
That's the worst. I've thought about that with this podcast. I'm like, man, I need to do something to sort of put on the map. But you don't really go doing some cheesy publicity stunts, you know what I mean? You just put in the work, or is that just, am I being just like naive and thinking if you just put in the work and you just do the thing that you want to do, eventually you will become successful in some capacity?
I think if you take things seriously and then you feed the ecosystem, which in turn is going to feed you, I think that's probably the best way organically to make things work, you know?
There's no easy cheat code to any of this stuff, you know what I mean? Like, people have to, I'm sure that there is, if you put in the work, but there's still, you need luck in sort of viral content. You need people who know what they're doing, or you need the total opposite where you've got no idea. You just put something out there and fucking you just win the lotto.
Yeah. I don't have any answers for you. I'm sorry, man. I wish I did.
All right, we went on a bit of a tangent.
No, I find that stuff really fascinating personally. You know, it's the questions that I'm trying to answer, like,
which no one knows the answer to. Like, it'd be absolute bullshit, I think, if someone sat there in a advertising office and said, "We know how to make something go viral." Because I think that's bullshit. You know.
Well, you know, like every time that I try and create, like, even from for my own pieces, you know, I try and think about utilizing something which hasn't been done before, or at least like overly thrashed, you know. I can't just make a video for myself that is like another like rapping in the car park, like Carl said, you know. Like,
yeah.
So like in turn it makes it much more difficult, but I feel like I need to sort of steer into some sense of originality for it to stand out from all these other things. And I think that's absolutely essential regardless of what platform that you're doing, you know. Yep. Unfortunately, the bar is just getting lifted higher and higher to have anybody have any sense of like, attention brought to them as a result of that.
For sure.
You know, but I do really feel like originality is still possible, despite like people saying that nothing is original anymore.
Well, yeah, but I think that the whole internet is getting dumbed down with people making shit content, right? Like people, you know, reaction videos, people just talking about nothing. There is a whole lot of crap on there. So eventually you think the good content's got to rise to the top at some stage.
I definitely find that when I do find something, I definitely latch onto it though. Yeah, I stay fairly loyal to things once I'm tapped in.
For sure. And it's with the hip hop thing, it's a hard way. It's hard to try and put yourself out there without trying too hard, because then that can come across cheesy as well. Do you know what I mean? Like there's definitely a line to toe there.
I think the cheesiness and stuff, you can't escape it, man. If you know, like you're either in it or you're not.
Yeah. Let's get back on your journey, man. This is good though. I love this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It turned into an advertising chat for a little bit, but I like it.
What's what I do probably more than what I do.
Yeah, but which is sick. Like, and I'm picking your brain a bit here as well.
I think it's like probably almost one of the more interesting avenues of stuff that I've done over time. Really, is like creating media for other artists.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess that's cool because you think about your own stuff, but then you think about someone else. What qualities do they have that you don't have? How could you market them in this way? Or how is that going to be perceived in different capacities?
Well, around about this time that we were talking about, like from me doing all that stuff with Nuff Said and then ending up meeting all the cartel dudes is when YouTube became a thing.
What a huge pivotal time in just pop culture.
Yeah, well, I did some artwork for Raven, and then Gecko came in and asked me to do his artwork and stuff. And we just found that we gelled pretty well, and our intentions on what we wanted to create was pretty good. He was sort of like trying to start a label, which was what Crate Cartel was. I ended up moving in with Flu as well at the time. And he made an album called The Furnace, and we needed to do videos. And at the time, I just had bought, no, not that time, it was just after that, but YouTube became a thing, and I borrowed a camera from a mate, and we made some film clips and stuff. And, you know, nobody was really making film clips at the time, you know, so like putting that onto YouTube and all of a sudden it became accessible to anybody to watch whenever they wanted was a massive turning point for everyone. And then the digital SLR revolution came along, which was, for anyone that doesn't know, Canon released the 5D Mark II, which was like a digital SLR with interchangeable lenses, but it was the first digital SLR that could film 1080p and to a file that was like digestible by any computer. And so full HD with lenses that can change. You can just use photography lenses, so you can go wide, you know, fisheye, long lens, all of these things, and that just like changed the industry overnight for people.
Yeah.
So beforehand, it would cost $15,000 to make a music video. All of a sudden, some guy with a $3,000 camera, as opposed to a $50,000 camera, it was like an what do they call it? A disruptor.
Yeah, for sure.
For the industry.
And bandwidth changed, so people were watching more videos. You know what I mean? Like, because
Totally.
I think the early days of YouTube videos were like a minute long or something, like the very early days, and then they extended them.
Right, I do remember it happening at some point.
Well, yeah, and then that changed everything.
I mean, I don't think I ever had they didn't ever said that we couldn't have a 3-minute video or whatever on there, but maybe that was beforehand.
It was, man, YouTube started out as a dating website.
Get out.
No, it did, man. February 14, like, you know, Valentine's Day. They launched, and while YouTube was supposed to be like, you put yourself out there, hey, this is me, I do that. I think that's why they're a minute long.
Right.
And then you looked through and found somebody you wanted to date. And then they realized, hang on, this platform's more than that. It started as a dating platform.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man.
Man.
Spin out. Yeah, because someone told me that, and I'm like, nah. And then I looked it up, and it's legit.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So anyway, but they did change. I think at some stage they changed it from 1 minute to 3 minutes, and then I think they capped it at 15 minutes before the long form stuff.
Yeah, I remember the 15-minute window because it was around. I think they shifted that around about the time that first rapper tag whole thing happened.
That's right. Yeah. Because 360 was putting them up on his own website.
Not sure because nothing was over 15 minutes or what.
Yeah.
But I know the second round 360 was uploading them to his own thing because he was obviously trying to direct traffic to his own YouTube channel, which is smart or whatever.
Yeah.
But the first one was everybody was putting them up wherever they wanted, and yeah, that was wild.
It was, man. Even people didn't really know. Like I don't know if you know Aaron Gock's a comedian.
No.
He came in. He's done an episode. He went viral for a bunch of stuff, but he's like, he didn't even know how to put those videos up and direct them to his YouTube channel. He would just put them up there. They went viral, but people didn't even really know what to do with them. They were out there. People are then, in hindsight, getting like, you know, royalties from his content because it's such an early time.
Yeah, I think
you know the classic Stitch Up dude.
I think vaguely. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it was just a funny time where people didn't know what to do with their content.
Yeah, we definitely have struggled a few times with that, and most of our videos were put into one place, but you know, they keep on, like you were saying before, moving the goalposts. I remember like having our channel monetized at one point, and then all of a sudden we didn't reach the standardized. So we had our monetization taken away from us, and it was just like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I think, well, it's just a new medium, and they don't really know how to work it, you know? And that's why I think TikTok, like as much as I dislike it and I don't use it, they make it really easy for people to monetize their channel if they do fucking do something.
Yeah, I mean, I've just spent a lot of time trying to like understand the ins and outs of it, you know,
for
work purposes and stuff. But I fail to, I think largely because of my age, I fail to connect with a lot of the content on there. Like, you know, I understand it in theory, but you know, like the way that it just feeds you content over and over.
Never-ending scroll.
Yeah, and accounts, the way that they click views based on how long you're actually looking at it. I don't think you actually have to watch something for very long. So hence, they like give you these like wildly inflated figures. Oh man, my videos reached 47,000 people, you know, but has it really like, you know, the 2 seconds of like...
But you look at the shares and that sort of thing, then that gives you an indication, comments and the likes. Another thing that TikTok do very well is they categorize, or they pull all your likes into one thing that comes up on your profile.
Right.
So you say you've got 100 videos and they've all got 5,000 likes. It'll put you've got 500,000 fucking likes on there when that's just accumulated over your whole profile. I hope the maths works out, but you know what I mean?
It just goes to show how little I've really spent time
So
on
from an
that.
advertising point of view, they're not pushing people to do that sort of stuff?
They are, but the thing is, you know, like... it definitely gets to a point where it's like we're investing all this money in this avenue, which is not really yielding the results that we have to.
Yep.
And they ended up scaling their jobs down to a particular size and then putting it where it actually needs to be, where it's actually like having returns.
It's probably not the content you want to make, but at least you're creative and you're in that field, you know?
Yeah. You know, sometimes it's like, sometimes I'm excited about what we're making, and other times, you know, it's churn and burn, you know?
Yeah, for sure. What's better than having a factory job?
100%, man. Like,
you know?
it should not look... I feel very privileged that I get to be creative for a living, that's for sure.
For sure. All right, let's get back on your journey. Crate Cartel starting to form.
Oh, yeah. So all that sort of stuff happened. Major turning point for us was getting distributed by OB. So I remember Flu and I sitting down and writing all the press releases and making all the mock-ups and bringing it into Pegs and say, hey, you know, do you want to distribute this album that we've made, you know?
For people that don't know, this is not just a record store now. This is this is a whole record label.
Yeah, so the Hilltop Hoods had happened and, you know, Obese was nationally distributed into JB Hi-Fi at the time. So at that point, vinyl was sort of there, but not really, but CDs were still booming. And so getting distributed by into JB Hi-Fi, which I think at the time had something like 151 national stores or maybe even more. Yep. I can't remember the exact figures. Yeah.
Big
So being distributed means that every store would order 10 copies of your album. 150 stores, each getting 10 copies of the album is like, you know, selling 1,500 units on day one. Yep. So you get $10 per unit. That's not bad money for some kids making rap records at home.
For sure. And so then that makes you think, okay, so we got distribution, we can make a go of this and we can actually build something. Once you sign that distribution deal.
Oh man, you made things like seem accessible again, you know, like, but you know, that window was only for so long.
CDs.
Yeah, you know, the whole digital thing sort of crept in, Spotify and, you know, CDs sort of dipped out. And also like that whole like vinyl transition as well was like, also just took that last little bit away from it too with vinyl coming back. Yeah.
But with you guys and, you know, Crate is obviously a reference to records and that sort of thing, you're poised for that to do well in that sort of resurgence as well.
Totally. So there was a Gecko, or Phil Gecko was still running the label for most of this time, and he had a studio as well, and he was recording and producing for a lot of other artists at the time. But there definitely became a point where we had to pivot. The whole running of the thing as a business was becoming taxing on him, and we transitioned who was heading the label, and I took over operations so he could just focus more on being an engineer and an artist.
Was it daunting? You were prepared?
Look, I've sort of was already doing a lot of the visual and organizing of like manufacturing and stuff. You know, I'd been working at Obese and hanging out at Obese for a long time. So I had a pretty fair understanding of it. So I wasn't too daunted by that. It was more just the financial aspect, and where I wanted to take it was pressing records. So I had to do a bit of fundraising. I got everybody to kick in like, I don't know, $100 or something. and I ordered a run of T-shirts, and so they were just like, we'll press everybody's records, man, all based off the sales of these T-shirts, and I raised a bunch of money and put the rest in myself, and I think we pressed the first major release that we did was The Horror for Phil Gector's album.
Yep.
And that sold out in 15 minutes online, all 300 copies.
Was your website prepared for that?
Well, I only ever ran my website through Big Cartel, which is like hosted overseas.
Big server.
Yeah, so it was never going to, that's not going to crash.
No.
It was only if you're like doing like a WordPress sort of thing off like a budget hosting that you'd have issues. So fortunately, everybody always saying, oh man, we crashed the internet. It's like, nah, you just had a shit web store, bro. You couldn't like sell more than 20 at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry to, but
yeah, I know.
I don't want to like discredit anybody who thinks that they like killed it or whatever, but like just you're losing money. Yeah. You didn't crash with the internet, you're losing money.
Yeah, for sure. Unless it's a strategic thing to build hype.
Nah, there's nothing strategy about that. Sell out, bro.
Sell your shit. So then you're pressing up records. Zenith seems to be the place.
No, at that time Zenith was not the place to go. Right. Zenith was still owned by Obese at the time. Because Obese bought the old Corduroy records. Okay. I think there was an issue there. Maybe, I don't know the exact ins and outs, but I think they went under maybe because they were like doing some, I don't know. Their operations weren't running straight and they went under. And I think Pegs bought the plants and then spent a lot of money trying to figure out how it all worked, because like at that time it was a fairly dying art form. People weren't really like sure about the ins and outs on how to not only maintain the machinery but also what was required to actually run the lathe, the electromagnetic process of creating the stampers and then putting everything together. So the quality of the records was really not great for an extended period of time.
Yeah, right.
So everybody was looking overseas to get these records pressed for ages, and in order to do that, the shipping prices of pressing records
are fucking heavy.
Oh man! And so if you put them on a plane, your freight costs are actually more than the actual pressing costs, and then it would blow your prices out astronomically. We worked out that when Morns was pressing 0. I was trying to just sort out a better solution, but they went and ordered their copies from a place called recordpressing.com, I think. It was like somewhere in LA. And they placed the order before they got a shipping quote. And not only did the business go under midway through the pressing, pressing records was really treacherous at that time. The vinyl boom hadn't happened yet, so all these businesses were going under.
So the businesses hadn't come to terms with the resurgence. So
the resurgence wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
So like, not only were we really like risking these like $5,000-$6,000 price tags, we just didn't know how to get them here. And the thing about shipping things from America is that like, if you like, the only way to get the cost down was by using a freight forwarder. And the way the freight forwarders work, you press the records, they get done, they get sent to a shipping company who then sits it in a warehouse or on a dock until they have enough to fill a shipping container, and then they put it on a boat. So not only is there like TNT shipping it to the shipping company, then the shipping company waits maybe 2 months before they fill this shipping container. And for all you know, your records are sitting on a dock in California in the heat, turning into a dish. And then they go on the shipping container and it's 2 months on the, stacked up with all these other things. And then it has to go through another shipping company once it arrives in Australia, which means you have potentially 4 people that you could blame for your records being dished, and nobody's paying for insurance. So it's like,
yeah, or a container being dropped. Like it's value. It's fragile shit.
Yeah. So like the risk of like having these, like $5,000, so much money to us at that point, still heaps of money, but even more so to like 25-year-old kid. And I'm like, when these records arrive and only half of them are actually in the condition that you can actually sell them in, all of a sudden your like unit price goes from what you thought was going to be, hopefully $13 to $17. It becomes like, I think the Zero records, once we pulled them out, they ended up being like $40 or $50 unit cost.
Yeah. And then you got to make your margin.
Well, I didn't want to like try and, at that time, like nowadays people sell records for $100 and they don't even blink about it. But for me at the time, I didn't want to like, you know, take the piss out of the people buying our records. I felt privileged that anybody wanted to buy our records. So I was really staunch and pretty much sold them for cost price and
in JB and stuff?
No. None of the records. That was all through our web store because I wanted that direct access to people because I wanted to build my mailing list.
Oh, that's clever, yeah. So I'm guessing that JB probably aren't even really selling records.
Not yet.
Stage. No, CDs was the way to do it.
People thought we were crazy pressing records at the time, you know, like JB Hi-Fi was still moving, you know, but, you know, the moment that first Gecko record sold 300 copies in 15 minutes, I was like, oh man, we're on here.
Yeah, for sure. I think the sad reality, I think, is that CDs had to die and MP3s had to take over and streaming had to work for vinyl to come back because people needed the tangible copy.
Spotify wasn't a thing yet when we were selling records. We were quite early on the way.
And iTunes was.
Yeah, iTunes was happening, but I still think people were reluctant to pay for digital products.
So just pirating shit.
Yeah, it's like, you know, Napster had come and gone by this point, but there's still like other avenues that people were doing, you know, like people still had iPods and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Morns. Do you want to sort of break down how he came into the Crate Cartel family?
Yeah. Okay. So for those that don't know, Crate Cartel is myself, Phil, Gector, Flu, Raven, Morns, Wick. 86 was a member at a certain point in time. I think that's everyone. Okay. Apologies if I've missed anyone. That would be really poor form. I'd have to look at it again. But Morns and I have been friends for a very long time. As a result of me just being a bit of a like all-city dart-around kind of kid when I was in high school or whatever, and through AussieHipHop.com forums and stuff, you know, I'd met people and was really excited and spent a lot of time traveling to the northern suburbs and was friends with Morns beforehand, but it wasn't until I was living with Flu around about that time that we were doing videos and stuff that Flu also connected with Morns as well, and Morns featured on The Furnace, and I think Flu featured on Mr. Nobody.
Yep.
And sort of just pulled the gang a little bit closer together, and because we were working and had a lot of similar work ethics, you know, we just kept working together, and then homie jumped on in. Yeah.
And that was when you that was the whole synergy of the whole core kind of group when he jumped in?
Well, I think we were all on the same page at the time, you know. We were all wanting to do fairly like boom bap, ultimately fairly aggressive Melbourne rap, which was, you know, was the thing at the time.
Yeah. Who came up with the box face, man?
I think maybe that was Nevs or Morns together, potentially one of those two. Maybe it was their synergy. The box head was a thing before he was in Crate Cartel. Yeah.
It's so iconic
Oh,
now.
man. And the fact that he's had the same box head for the whole time, like every show, the box head would come to a launch or whatever, or for a film clip, it was always the same one.
Exact same one.
The same box. I'm pretty sure he's still got it, and it just like slowly gets a little bit more, or rapidly gets a lot more tattier as time goes on, but I think he still has the original box head.
Yeah, awesome. So he's jumped on, he's making records, you've done the Gector record. What else? Where does the cartel journey go from there, man?
Well, we'd done heaps of albums prior to the Gecko, but prior to that horror album.
But you're pressing records now.
I wasn't personally producing much music for these records at the time.
You're on the creative side.
Yeah, so like I was so consumed by visually doing the visuals and video, movies and running, the video clips and doing all the back end and the design of stuff that it probably took a toll on my creativity from creating music, which was like definitely something hard for me to swallow because I was watching all my friends do heaps of stuff. I started DJing around, during the Crate Cartel period as well because there weren't many DJs, and so I was DJing for all the guys too. So it was like one big happy family, you know. We were getting a lot of gigs at the time, and you know, like
It's a good time for Aussie hip hop.
yeah, you know, and we were really championing that Melbourne sound, so to speak, you know. So it was like, it was really exciting. And then the boom of the records was like very unexpected for us, like, but it was like a real like shot in the arm, you know. Like it was like, fuck, let's like keep moving on this. And then Flu season not long after that, which to me was like definitely like a really massive moment, not just for Crate Cartel, but I feel like the whole aesthetic of him toning his voice back was really making like Australian hip hop a bit more palatable and like coming into its own, you know, this like really yelly style of Australian rap was definitely something which I think a lot of people found very difficult to like get into at the time, especially transitioning from American rap.
Yep.
And I think he learned to like control his voice a lot more. And we were all like, what are you doing, Fluey? You're killing it, man, you know? And he had such a strong vision about like changing the way that he would deliver his vocals and then like recording this record. Easily one of the best pieces that we put out at the time, you know? And it was like,
very proud of.
Oh, I think it's such a great album, and it's like mainly produced by Phil Gector and Must. So it was like this Pang Cartel collaboration, which happened for a lot of records after that, which is pretty cool and continues to. But I think like that wave of what Fluey did really had a lot of influence on a lot of other people, and just learning to have a little bit more control on their cadence and intonation. Yeah, I think it was.
So the maturity of not necessarily rapping how you talk, but more musically or having a bigger picture vibe to it.
Well, I just think the projection of a lot of Australian hip hop at the time was really over the top and not really very controlled. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's how you talk. Like you don't yell when you talk. Why would you yell when you're rapping?
Okay, because it's aggressive.
Yeah, but you can be aggressive and you don't have to yell to be aggressive.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Okay.
You know, like, you know, it's like, and like any type of music, you know, I think having sort of like valleys and peaks, it's definitely like crucial to having music which has dynamics and progression, you know, like you don't want to go to 100, you don't listen to any song where they're singing and you go to 100 straight away for the whole song. Well, maybe you do in some hardcore songs or something.
Yeah, but, which is jarring to
yeah, so I think like it just showed him growing and understanding the medium so much more, and I thought it was like such a bold move at the time, you know, which looking back is like was so killer, man. Like such like props to like change your whole style to move forward, you know, which yeah.
Is that a pivotal part for the label?
I personally think that around between like Goat Mob and Flu Season is when the music really started hitting its stride, yeah.
And then the record boom, is that starting?
That's that. Well, we were selling heaps,
but it's not popular.
Look,
it's popular for you guys.
The record boom was like it came slowly. It didn't happen like overnight. Well, not as far as my, you know.
So the hardcore diggers, or the collectors, I should say, not so much diggers, are buying, and you're selling out quick.
Well, like we were saying, you know, because not everybody was pressing records, man, everybody wanted one. You know, like all of a sudden vinyl's available again now, and like, you know, it took a while for everybody else to take that step and press things, you know. So so Flu Season came out and bang, you know, that sold in 15 minutes again, which was like mind-boggling to us to be selling out these whole pressings like within the opening hours. You know, we had to save a few for Frankie at Obese and a few other places around town, but you know, like it just meant that it was like sustainable, which was awesome.
Did you find that because I guess from a business point of view, you think we're selling out this many, can we push to 500, or you just think supply and demand, keep it to a...
We did, and unfortunately I feel like maybe I chose the wrong record to like move to that larger amount. You know, I was such a believer of everything that everybody was doing that maybe I was just like, let's go more and more and more and more, and could have been a bit more objective about what it was. And maybe sometimes I would like gas up the lads. They were a bit more reserved at times, saying maybe this is just a record we made for fun. Maybe we shouldn't press this one or whatever. And for me, I was like, everything's selling and let's go, you know? And,
yeah, that is a hard one, yeah.
And, you know, sometimes I had so much belief and faith in everything that they were doing, you know? Maybe I was just like excitable or whatever, but, you know, like sometimes you press like 500 and then you get stuck with like 200 because the wave might have like just mellowed out a bit. Like we were still selling like decent amounts of records, but by that point, heaps of people were pressing lots of records by then.
And like forums and online is how you're doing all that then, because like social media is not really that.
Facebook was in its infancy, but they hadn't worked out how to monetize it yet, and so as a result of that, everything that we posted got seen by everybody. It was sick, you know, like around the time that I put out my first record, Megalomaniac. So this is 2016, which is a little bit later than the flu season.
Yeah. So so at that stage, there is Instagram as well.
Yeah. But Facebook was the main weapon. If I go back and look at my number of likes and stuff that I saw around that era on Instagram, I was getting no traction. It seemed like I was doing something, but I was putting in all this work to not really get seen by many people. Facebook hadn't worked out that they could bottleneck your views for money, but they also offered boosting on your posts, which would expand you from not just your friends, but it would push to your friends of friends. So it was like this little window of Facebook that you could pay like $100 and boom, it's getting pushed.
Click a link on your post straight to where you buy the record, which you still can't do on Instagram.
We were selling like these packs of records. So it wasn't just the vinyl. It was like the vinyl, the CD, a tape, a t-shirt, a signed poster, and maybe some download codes for the instrumentals and stuff. And, I think we were pretty like ahead of the curve on doing that stuff. And we were selling them pretty cheap too, you know, like we were making money, but it was like heaps of crap for the money.
Yeah.
And so you combine that with like this small window of social media, which they hadn't worked out how to fuck you yet. And like everything was getting seen and people were buying and it was great, but it didn't last forever.
No. And as we mentioned before, they moved the goalposts.
Yeah. But it's cool, man. I felt super privileged, man, that people cared enough to want to like spend $100 on my record, man. You know, to me, like anybody, you got all that shit for like maybe $110 posted or something.
It's value for people.
Oh yeah, you know. But nowadays it's $100 for one record.
Shipping, everything's expensive, dude. Everything's expensive.
Look, I think you've just got to like work things in the appropriate way, you know, like work out the demand for what the records are versus, you know, pressing. Like I've definitely done the whole, like if you press like 500 copies, man, and then expect it to sell over the next however many years, you know, you're going to be in your deficit for a long time.
Yeah. And then you sort of toe the line with the pre-orders. Like when people do pre-orders of certain things, it works, but I'm guessing the manufacturing of records, you can't pre-order and expect that that's going to translate.
I'm really against the whole pre-ordering and then your album comes out and then 6 months later the vinyl comes, because not only do I feel like the interest in the record has definitely dwindled by that point, they've listened to it on digital platforms, it just arrives when the momentum's gone, but like you want to really like have that organic social media presence when things are happening. So if you put something up and then it's available to purchase and then people receive it amongst the like on day one when the album comes out, the excitement for people to pull something out and want to take a photo and post it is only going to create more momentum for your project. And that means that the tangible physical thing means that there's more people getting involved in your ecosystem that you created in the project. And then it like goes a little bit further. You know, you've got the record stores having it on their store, they're posting it and sharing it. You want as many people to share it and be a part of it as possible. And you're robbing yourself of all that if you do a pre-order And also, I think it's just like lets your fan base down if they don't get to be a part of the project, which ultimately that's what they're doing when they buy the thing, is they're really being equally.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You know, you can make as much music as you want. If no one's consuming it, then, you know,
Yeah.
make it for yourself. But yeah,
Totally.
having a label, you're hoping people are going to consume it.
Oh, man, you know, that's the unfortunate thing about like turning the whole thing into a business. You know, you start like viewing the whole process as like products and where it's going and, you know, markets and, you know,
It takes a fun out of it.
well, I did find that fun at certain points in time because I found an art in that. But as the goalposts changed and they made it more difficult for the little guy to do things, you know, I definitely made a point where I wanted to shift away from doing all that stuff and focus more on me doing me. That's for sure.
And then you think it's time to focus on your own creative project?
Well, I definitely recognized that unless I was going to be committing to doing more music, everyone was getting vastly more experienced and way better at making tunes than I was by the end of it. And I needed to like pull back and focus on what I was doing. And that's when my first album happened. Was like, I got a bit disenfranchised by what was going on in the music world and stuff. And I was a bit disappointed by what was happening. And I just needed to reset and refocus. And
You're talking about here or globally or what?
I was just like what was happening in my, you know, vicinity, you know, just things with working with people and, you know, I don't really want to go into it, but, you know, it was like a bit of a like shift in my mentality. And I'm very, very happy that I made a lot of those changes, you know, but it was a bit of like eye-opening for me, that's for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, of the business side, of the relationship side and that sort of thing. Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, like you get, when you're working with artists and stuff, there's a lot of like ego that's attached to a lot of these things. And it can become very like, you know, you're working closely with people on something which they care so intensely about. And when things don't go the right way, people can take things extremely personally. And then all of a sudden, this is on both sides of the things, and it can create like a lot of tension. And there was a lot of like relationships that I had that like struggled through a particular period of time in my life as a result of these things. And I needed to just reset and like see what was like more important to me, rather, because I got very caught up in like producing things for other people to the point it was my whole life was about externally helping people with their creative, and it was taxing just on a day-to-day basis because of like me having to pander to people's needs, but also meant that it was taking away from my like joy of creating itself. So I had to like refocus.
You had to find the love again.
100%.
Which sounds corny as fuck, but it's true.
Well, you know, like, and a lot of my focus went to like working with people overseas at that time as well. I learned a lot about, you know, it was really difficult for me to even get a feature on my songs from people that I spent, you know, the last 10 years making things for and with, you know. It was like, and then I shifted to like working with a few of my heroes from overseas, and the fact that I could like contact somebody, send them a deposit, and then like have one of the best rappers of all time rapping on my songs like in 6 days, whereas I was asking somebody 2 years to do a verse for me, really changed my perspective on what the music industry was, and the literal sense of it being called an industry.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you find that, like, with those, and they call, like, when people, you know, pay for verses, which obviously it's a business.
purchasing features, yeah.
That sort of thing, do you find that that's, like, it obviously happens a lot, but is that less organic, and you're not in the same studio, you're not in the same city as somebody, you're just, I don't know, it happens all the time, but do you find that it's a totally different process?
Well, it sort of injected me into another place that I would not have had an opportunity to go into at first.
Yeah. Put you on a map in another place.
Well, not just on the map, but also just like for me to learn about how people with significantly higher skill sets than I have, you know, do
Approach shit.
Yep. you know. And the thing is, I'm ultimately selling my product here anyway. And when I looked at how much they were charging versus what I would charge for my services, the pay difference was not very comparable, you know. It was comparable, you know, like it was pretty on par, you know. If anything, I was charging more for what I was doing, and so it seemed like a no-brainer to me. Yep. And once I'd done a few, I travelled over there. Yep. We worked on things in person,
and that must be
It totally opened the door, which I never thought would ever happen, and definitely changed my perspective on how people work here too, you know. So there was a lot of shade around people purchasing features for a long time in Australia. Oh, you know, you're just buying whatever. But, you know, at the same time, people buy beats, people pay for studio time, you know, you're paying for videos, you're paying for, why should somebody not get paid for their time because they contributed a vocal service to your song? That was like that was a penny drop moment for me, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that here, because there isn't that much money to go around, because the industry and the market isn't that big, that's potentially where that kind of negativity comes from.
People in America aren't making heaps of money from their songs too, you know.
Yeah, no. And I think, look, from an artist perspective, everyone wants to get paid and everyone deserves to get paid. So it does make sense. I guess the negativity probably comes because people see it's contrived and manufactured, that you can just, you know, like, at what point does it become DJ Khaled, where you just get someone to buy a beat and you pay that guy and you pay that guy and you just say a hook and then all of a sudden you've made a record? I guess that's the negativity comes from.
Well, you just change the role, I think. Like, that would be the role of like an executive producer or whatever. I mean, you know, Dr. Dre did the same thing in 2001, and that's touted as one of the best records of all time, you know. So...
He had a platform, but that's the thing. People want 2001. I still love it. It's a great record.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And you don't really think too much about, what did he have to do with that? Because he did have other producers. He had other people rapping. He just facilitated it.
Oh, no, I think he definitely had a lot of hands in all of it. But, you know, like, that's what the role of a producer actually does. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at like Quincy Jones produced like Thriller, right? But he didn't play most of the instruments. Yeah. Or any of them. I don't know if he necessarily did, you know, but like the credit lists of these things is like super long, you know. And I think as long as people trying to understand the scope of what they're working in, I definitely found with making my music that I wish I could play all the instruments on all my songs, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of collaboration with somebody else to really like knock it up to that next level.
So at what point did you think, I'm going to reach out to these artists overseas and sort of see where it goes? Like, do you remember that point? Did you think, what's going on in Melbourne, in Australia? I'm a bit over it. I'm just going to hit up some people on the internet.
Well, I had a few like experiences at first, you know, and I was like, had a bit of a window into the indie scene in America. But the biggest one was when I got AG on a song, and I met him when he was on tour in Melbourne, and I just talked to him for a brief little period of time, and he was like, "Yeah, man, we can make that work, man. Just send me an email one day." It took me ages to send him an email, but eventually I did, and he's like, "Yeah, cool." I sent him the beat, and like a week later, I had a song, and then the moment that happened, I was like, and it was the best song I'd ever made.
From a just so I can get my head around this, if they send you the vocal to that beat, does he then have to approve the track, or you buy it, you bought it, you can sort of do what you want with it, remixing? Like, there's a lot of fucking things that happen there.
Well, you know, there's like a mutual respect, I think, that you need to adhere to when making these songs. He'll send me the acapella in stems, so I have
everything. Yeah.
You'd hope that's what you get sent. Sometimes you don't get that much, but you know, his recording quality and like his attention to detail when making it was better than most people at the time. As you'd expect from somebody that's been a recording artist for like 30 years. But, you know, I went back and arranged the song around his vocals, played new lines and so forth. The beat was still the same, but I then got it mixed, and then I sent it back to him and said, "Look, this is the finished version. You cool with this?" You know, but you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say that there's a level of respect required to talk to people about this. But sometimes people just don't care either.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have relationships which will continue after that. You know, we've worked on numerous projects afterwards. I worked on his projects as well. So I ended up doing a video for his album not long afterwards. It was produced by The Alchemist.
Yeah, wow.
And so that was like another moment for me, you know, and then he did more on mine, and we still in talks today, you know. So
amazing.
So like, you know, sometimes like taking these steps into the world can benefit. Other times they can take your money and run. So
I've heard of that happening with people literally taking money and never sending the verse.
Oh man, or they just send you this rubbish. It's so bad you don't want to use it. You know, like, you know, it's like it's a gamble, but you know, like same with hiring a contractor to fix your dunny. You know, they might not fix it real good, you know?
The thing is with that is they send you an invoice afterwards.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't know they haven't done the job properly until like 6 months' time and it ruins your house.
That's true.
But, yeah, like definitely a big, interesting experience. And then following that on, you know, I went and filmed videos with all these people in New York, and you know, there's some stories about that in itself, you know, like, you know, and every time I've gone back, I've had more of a network that grew. And, you know, I have lifelong friends that are there now, and I've, you know, can always go and just drop in and say what up.
For sure. New York, man, when you go there as an Aussie kid from Melbourne, people like, oh, you really know your hip hop shit when you go there. Like, I find that a lot of people in America, like, they find it hard to get their head around that there's a lot of similar culture here in Australia than there is over there.
Well, there's two sides to it, you know, like naturally I obsessed over hip hop culture for a majority of my life and did a deep dive that was like, you know, more than what most people who are into hip hop would. And the other thing is like, we had this like whole mentality in Australia that New York is like graph and breakdancing and, you know, dudes having ciphers on the street corner, man. And you go there and it's 2024, man. And it's like drill like everywhere else in the world, you know, or whatever, you know, there's still like elements of boom bap culture, and there's still like summer jams and people painting projects and stuff like it is. But, you know, like it's, times have moved on like the rest of the world, and for some reason we thought like 94 was the peak of hip hop here for a long time, but it's the rest of the world has been doing other shit.
Yeah, and that's true. And again, it's the halcyon time. You sort of have that image in your mind, and
yeah, man. It's like, you know, I definitely went to some ill jams when I was there, and people were fascinated that I had an understanding of like 90s and 2000s rap.
Yeah,
and they greatly appreciated it. But, you know, I also had to go and learn that, you know, I was like, man, I'm a diehard Queens rap fan. I love Nas and Mobb Deep, you know, it's like my favorite shit in the world. Well, for most of my life it was anyway. But, you know, going there and doing songs with people from Queens and spending time in Queensbridge, I came to this conclusion that is it kind of strange that I am like obsessing about this like
small part.
And I go there and I'm like, yeah, you know, treating it like it's like a landmark. You know, is that weird that I'm just showing up at homeboy's house, you know, and treating it like it's...
There's two ways you could look at that. Like, it is kind of odd, but also that those artists put so much of their area into their art, so you can't have you look at the cover album and that's the Marcy Street, or you know what I mean?
Totally, but it was just like a thing that I had to go there and realize, you know, and like
definitely has a very unique timestamp in sort of hip hop, though, like you said, that 94 sort of thing.
Yeah, you know, and it also just like made me learn my place a bit more in the world, like going and experiencing these places and people.
Yeah, and then you come back here and you feel like you're a little bit more wise, a little bit more worldly. You've got more to offer.
Oh man, it just made me like really have a polarizing perspective on Australian hip hop, and like being from Australia, doing this African American culture in a predominantly white colonialist settlement on the other side of the world. You know, it just changed my perspective on, you know, how things get digested a bit.
For sure. But it must sort of strengthen your love for it as well. You're just looking at it through different lens now that you've seen the actual birthplace of some of these sort of movements that you're into.
It definitely creatively strengthened my love for making things, but it also made me sort of like not as fond of the weird adaptation that Australian hip hop was.
Okay.
And so I felt like it was like, as far as me creating things, I needed to make sure that what I was putting into my music represented where I felt,
You fit in.
not just me, but just like my interpretation of the culture needed to go. So like, especially with like the Black Lives Matter movement and me making the last record with 1/6, it definitely made me learn more about my privilege of being a white person. Not to like bang on about that sort of stuff, but I definitely needed to respect. I definitely needed to respect and learn a lot about my place in the world. And I feel like we talked about a lot of that in the process of making the record, and him talking about it in the record is like, sort of just like me learning a lot about that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of people will say that, you know, hip hop, it's an oppressed music that comes from black culture, which is true to an extent. But like any kind of art form, it evolves, and something that's been around for 50 years I don't think it makes it exclusively to some specific cultural group. It has evolved from that. You have to pay respect to where it's come from, but surely people all around the world can make hip hop now, you know?
100%, but it doesn't change how I feel.
For sure.
So like, I'm not trying to tell people any otherwise, but I definitely like witnessed and it morph into essentially an abstraction which didn't align with my values or what I felt like it came from.
Yep.
And I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was in line
with your beliefs,
with my beliefs, and
Sure.
and you know what I wanted to perpetuate for in the future.
And now, obviously, with Australia being such a multicultural place, you've got people from all over the world, and now the hip hop scene, Aussie hip hop, for lack of a better term, is people from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of nationalities, and it's kind of gone in a different direction altogether to where it was in the mid-2000s, mid-20-teens. The commercial popular stuff now is not white Aussie kids from the suburbs anymore.
Oh, man, I love this new wave. I really do, man. You know, like Sampa the Great is possibly one of the greatest talents going at the moment, you know, and I'm super proud to see where people have taken it, that's for sure.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
And you've got the whole Polynesian thing as well. Like those dudes, they've created a whole genre within this drill sort of thing as well.
Oh, man. Seeing Hal's positive input on all that is so inspiring.
And then now there's like multi-level facets of different levels of Aussie hip-hop. When that didn't exist 20 years ago, you had Aussie hip-hop, and you had American hip-hop.
Yeah.
And you had maybe UK hip-hop. Now we've got different subgenres of genres, and it's crazy.
Oh, man. Yeah, I remember discovering UK hip-hop for the first time, all that low-life stuff, you know, Jest and Brain Tax and stuff. Just how... like any culture, food or music or whatever, the world gets a little bit smaller each time you like take a bite or bigger in itself. But, you know, seeing music from all the different areas of the world just made me want to go there and visit them and sample them for myself. I'm still yet to go to Europe though. So
At all?
Nah.
Really?
I just kept going back to New York and dipping in. All of my travels, not all of them, but have been dictated by whatever projects I was working on at the time.
So you need someone from the UK to hit you up so you can get over there.
Oh, I did a few songs with the UK dudes on the first record, but it just didn't really
didn't take you there.
Oh man, I was just obsessed with New York, man.
Even your fashion sense is pretty New York right there.
Oh man, yeah.
You mentioned briefly your most recent project was 1/6. Do you want to break down how that sort of came about and what the mantra is behind that project?
Well, it was 6 songs in the end, which took way too long to make 6 songs. But we started them before COVID.
Yeah, that is a while.
And finished it after COVID. So, like, it really interrupted our ability to link. But the mantra behind the record was we needed to be in person. I've done 2 records now, which had a lot of sending things back and forth through the internet. And I really wanted to make sure that I reconnected with Aaron as a friend. We'd been friends since I was 19 years old or whatever, maybe even earlier, 17, 18. And the premise of making every song was we would hang out, have a meal. We would, talk about whatever we were, and he had to write every song on the spot, and we'd record it, and that was the process. It was like
opposite of the internet.
Yeah, we were trying to really make like a casual. Just inroad into towards like not overwriting songs, making it being just about where we were at the time. And, often it meant that songs got half finished when he left. It was just ideas and scraps. We were really trying to push outside of our boundaries. So I was trying to encourage Aaron to sing a lot more on the songs.
Yeah.
But as a result of being a non-trained singer, sometimes things would work, sometimes wouldn't. I was really pushing the boundaries with playing with auto-tune, working in like rhythms and patterns that were outside of my traditional boom bap roots. And
the envelope.
Yeah. And like my interest in playing instruments had been growing and growing over time. And it was like there were a lot of songs that were not sample based on there. So like not everything that we made ended up on the record, but he had 2 children in the process of making the album. So like that drastically changed or just even the way that subject matter of what he was writing about. There are songs on there which he started writing before he had kids and then wrote the second half after he'd had 2 kids. And he actually stopped and said that he didn't want to put the song out because he didn't feel the same about the song anymore after having kids. And then I had to convince him to how
that juxtaposition works.
Yeah. And so he finished writing these songs, and I think it created some like really, polarizing writing that is really like quite, amazing.
For sure. As you know, having kids will change it.
Oh yeah, I'm deep in the game right now.
How old are you? Like a few months?
Like 11 weeks on Monday, I think. So I'm fresh.
And that changes everything, man.
Oh, it's just made the whole world very slow, but like everything slowed down because like my sole focus is on that. But then, like all the sleep debt means that everything seems like jarring and fast. So it's this weird like push-pull. Yeah, it's a very surreal experience, that's for sure.
For sure, man. And nothing sort of... People tell you, oh yeah, have a kid and everything will change, but nothing really prepares you for it. You sort of hear that before you have a kid and you're like, I'm sure, yeah. And then you have one and you're like,
I just feel like sorry that I wasn't more supportive of all my friends that had kids before me.
I've had mates. My mate Benny, who one of my best mates, he rang me after he had his son because I had mine 2 years before him, and he rang me and he's like, "Man, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I just thought you could just bring your kid to the barbecue and you could just go to the pub, and I'm sorry, man. I gave you such a hard time." I'm like, "You get it now, man."
Oh man, all through doing all this music shit, like with every record, everybody had a kid except for me, pretty much, the whole way through, and I just feel, I just messaged him. I was like, man, I'm fucking really sorry if I was like a fucking bad influence on. No, I'm just like dragging people out. I remember like the Brisbane Megalomaniac launch was on like Fluey's daughter's birthday or the day after or whatever. He was like, man, I can't miss my daughter's birthday. And I was so mad at him, and I feel so bad at like the immense amount of pressure that I put on him to come to my show and then fly back the next day so he can make it to his daughter's birthday. I just feel like such a prick.
Because it does. It puts everything into perspective, and people try and say, "You sure? Well, you're going to do this or you're going to do that." You're like, "Hey, do you know what? I'm actually pretty chill to stay at home with my kid. Like, fine, But people think that because all of a sudden stuff that you thought was overly important isn't that important anymore.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it isn't important.
At the end of the day, no, it's not. But I don't want to be one of those people that harps on about having kids, because not everyone can have kids and not everyone does have kids. But for the people that do, it changes fucking everything.
No, this stuff is important, all these things, because like naturally everything that I do is what makes me who I am, and likewise for you. And, like hopefully all of these things will be, if my daughter wants to come and learn music or do art or any of these things, I wouldn't have been able to do any of these things without my parents' like interest in, technology or, or whatever they were doing at the time.
I think it's really important to facilitate what your kids want to do and not push them, and figure out what they want to do and then help them in that. When we're young, you've got the dad that screaming at their kid, wants him to be good at footy, but they're just not. That's bad. If your kid likes something, help them in that, whatever it is.
Like growing up, sometimes, especially like with rap music, man, my parents didn't understand it.
They get it now?
Nah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a little bit more. The big moment was like my parents coming to my first album launch. I'd been making music for a really long time, but like the Megalomaniac launch was a Revolver. It was packed. Lazy came down from Brisbane. I had Starve from New York. All of my mates, essentially because I'd worked on everybody else's records for like 10 years prior to this. Everybody came.
Yeah, they owed you one.
Look, I don't want to make it feel like they were obliged to come, but I think people wanted to come and support.
Of course.
And for my parents to come and see that, at least they stopped treating it like it was like a joke.
Yeah.
Like they just couldn't connect with it. And then I remember, my mum would kill me for saying this publicly or whatever, but I remember one time she sat down and told a room full of people that my brother played all the music on my music.
What?
I was like, because my brother's like amazing multi-instrumentalist. He's incredible. And he did contribute. He did contribute to my records and stuff. But like, it just went to show that the understanding of like sampling and production wasn't like there. And so for me to be able to communicate that to them has taken time. And like that with any new kind of art form, I think it's important that we just like be open-minded.
Yeah.
And, be supportive of something even if we don't understand it.
It is harder for some of the older generation to sort of get stuff.
Yeah.
My nan still calls this a vodcast with a V.
That's okay.
So why are you spending all your time and money on this vodcasting? What even is a vodcast? I'm like,
don't worry, man. It's just like it's modern day radio.
I guess I should probably try and explain that to him. But man, like solo, it must be a great time, like you said, to make and put your own art in when you've spent most of your career just working on other people's. It must be like a nice time.
I think it's nice to be able to focus on my own things, but you really need to like maintain being in the ecosystem. Like I can't just go out here and work on stuff on my own. I've recognized that I'm actually terrible at, like,
you need to collaborate.
Yeah, I need to work at least with one other person in order to stay motivated and do things. I need to be held accountable. And the other thing is like, I actually perform best when I'm actually applying myself to help somebody else achieve what they want to do.
And that's been evident from this whole chat that's pretty much where you fit in.
Totally. And I've been working on a record with Traz from, he's down this way too. And it's great. It's been awesome working with him. And I've really, rather than trying to steer the ship for the whole project, I've really been trying to like tailor things to what he wants to do.
Yep.
And it's been a much different process of working yet again. So he comes and he brings a few records or whatever. He's got a vision in mind and a song written, and we generally make something on the spot to tailor towards what he wanted to do. And it's been a very different way of me working, but it has definitely like reminded me of like my capabilities to be able to apply myself for someone else, even if it's under the pressure on the spot. It's very rarely that we don't walk away with something that was good at the end of the session.
For sure. And that's going to be a full album or an EP?
We're at 8 songs at the moment, but I think we'll probably make it to 10.
Yep.
You know, it's had a little bit of a pit stop with the baby and everything.
Yeah.
And Skeleton Coast.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So, and that's the other thing with producing stuff like the way that you were doing it. You got to make sure that you're working on multiple projects at once, because even if you're not working on them, you've still got that release coming, and then that, you know what I mean?
Well, I often in the past stopped working on other projects because I felt like I was cheating on the one that I was doing. You know, it was like going to interfere with me doing that.
Monogamous to the project,
which is good and bad, but I think it was actually hurting the projects in the end. So I have multiple projects now on the go, and I think it's better in that capacity, but it can definitely mean that I can get a bit fragmented amongst things. But I do think the sound of the Traz project is really cohesive and hasn't suffered from me working on multiple things, that's for sure.
What about the Cartel?
The Cartel had to take a different shape, I think, after a while. You know, like, I'm extremely proud of everything that we achieved in the time that we were doing it, but everybody's like avenues really evolved over time to the point where we were no longer all trying to achieve the same thing. Mm-hmm. And by me trying to like hold everybody together and have a unified aesthetic, was like trying to pull some people in directions that they didn't necessarily want to go. And it became taxing in the end. And I felt, and whilst we're still a crew and we're still mates and stuff, running it as a label, I think was like taking too much of my time and, you know, putting tension on relationships in the group. And I think just letting people do what they want to do and support them in their avenues and what they want to do when the time comes is better for me and for everybody else.
Yeah. So it's still there, but it's
still put the logo on my records and stuff, but like my most recent one came out with Pang. Like we've had a long-standing relationship. Musty is amazing, and you know, I feel super privileged to be able to release through them as well.
Yep. And even the most I think the most recent Morns album still has a Crate Cartel logo on it as well.
Maybe I can't remember. It probably would do. He's got it stamped on his back. I mean, it's not going anywhere. But, you know, it's been coming out, both the last two, I think, have come out through Golden Era. I mean, I'm still very much a part of what he's doing. I don't necessarily, like, work on everything that he does, but we still talk weekly about whatever he's, like, on his mind. And, you know, I offer a bunch of realistic, probably, you know.
He values your opinion.
Oh, and I value his and his friendship too, you know. But, you know.
Because when this comes out, his record would be about
July 5th, I think, is when it comes out.
No, this will be still before that.
Yep.
A few episodes ahead. But he's releasing that with Golden Era, which is, I think he's the only one that's on that label.
Well, I think Ben Martin works for Universal, who's the guy that runs Golden Era now. And so he picks a few artists that he'll occasionally work with. So he did the Shadow one, and I think he also did the Husky one.
Yep.
I don't know if it was out on Golden Era, but, you know, they're all in the same channel, really.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, and he's a hardworking guy. He's got his finger on the pulse, so he knows what's up.
With music in general, not just hip-hop, but music in general, where do you think we're at this stage in 2024, where it's heading, the trends that are happening? Like, are we in a good place? Are we in a weird place?
I mean, I'm always very positive these days in comparison to how I used to be. You know, I think everything is so much more accessible now to be creative. Yep. In comparison to, say, where I started with Acid Pro 2 and trying to learn an MPC 2000 with no manual, clicking buttons to find out what it did, you know, in comparison to now, you can just like boot up a trial of Ableton and drag something in and start clicking and going, and then publish your music to Spotify or SoundCloud or wherever you want to go and connect with like-minded artists on the internet. Like, you don't have an excuse anymore. And I think like the tutorials on the internet to be able to learn how these things go, I think like there's so much groundwork for people to get involved and have a good time, man. There's
no gatekeeping anymore like there was.
Well, like I'm sure that there is to certain degrees, like certain outlets and stuff are always going to be more inclined to go with something, but that's just how anything goes, man. Nothing's really changed in that regard.
Yep.
It's just the players have changed.
And do you said before you like where Aussie hip hop is now, but what about other genres of music? What else are you digging?
I'm super into the Melbourne band scene. I was really inspired by like Surprise Chef and Mild Life and Karate Boogaloo and stuff. If you haven't checked out those bands, they're super sick. They're sort of doing, these instrumentally, jazzy vibes, and it definitely like made me want to like try and like expand a bit more sonically as far as like, different synths and keys and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just sampling those, you want to create the sounds yourself?
Well, I was definitely like going in that direction already, but just like the tonality of their music has like been really cool, and it's sort of like intricate yet sparse. Yeah, and just like also from a live perspective, like it really broadened me into a point where I wanted to like have more players and such for our live shows.
Yep.
And fortunately, 1-6 was like already playing in bands. He's in the Public Opinion Afro Orchestra and a few other bands, and so he had access to some phenomenal musicians. So hearing like our music reiterated by musicians far greater than myself, blew my mind. It was probably one of the coolest experiences I've seen or been a part of,
Sure.
So we filmed that whole live show at Northcote Social Club, so hopefully that'll come out soon. And
Oh, so you haven't put it out?
nah, we haven't put it out yet.
Oh, because when you said I haven't sent it to you, I'm like, oh, okay, but that you were just going to give me a little bit of a sneak.
I've got it edited and finished, but it's like, because it's like multi-track audio, it's just in the middle of like deciding where we go with it mixing wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so where do you see yourself going? Are you going to be doing more production? You're going to be doing more collaboration stuff? You're going to be doing more artwork stuff? What do you think?
I definitely will be doing more music, that's for sure. It's just trying to find my momentum again after this whole having a child experience. But yeah, like super dope time with the baby and all, but I would definitely like to pick up these few other things. Like I've been working with, as I said, Traz, doing some stuff with Dill Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some more stuff from this guy from New York named Milano, who I've worked with before. But yeah, so I've got heaps of these tunes on the go, man. It's pretty excited to get them out.
And picking up the camera again?
I'm always picking up the camera.
Yeah.
So like it's what I do for a job. Just depends. Like I've got 2 videos that haven't come out from this 1-6 project.
Yes, so there is a clip that you have put out.
There's 2 clips that I put out.
Okay.
So we did one, like I really wanted to bring my brother in. He's the
Because he
multi-instrument.
plays all the instruments on your records.
Of course, man. So we might as well make all the videos for it too, right? No, his name's George Johnson, and he's a great photographer and, cinematographer. And naturally, I can't do everything. So I wanted to make sure that I bring him along and give him the creative freedom to do what he was doing. And, it's probably I'm a bit of a taskmaster too, and having him come and make film clips for me probably put him through the ringer. But we went to the sand dunes because the album's called Skeleton Coast. And so the front cover has like, it's the Skeleton Coast is a place in Namibia where the sand dunes meet the sea. And so he took that. We like to run all the themes through the record. And he took us out to Wilson's Prom, where I had to drive there at 3 a.m., pick up Aaron on the way, load all the film gear into this wheelbarrow. Oh, man. And then I had to lug the wheelbarrow in. It's like a 40-minute walk along a sand trail, pushing everything in a wheelbarrow, to then only turn around and have to push Aaron around in a wheelbarrow for like 12 hours up sand dunes,
You couldn't even get any leverage on a sand dune with a wheelbarrow, could you?
The whole day I could just hear like that cannabis line, I walk 1,000 miles through soft sand,
Yeah.
That was hard, So, like sometimes the lengths that you got to go to create these like...
Was it worth it?
Oh, man, it was sick. George crushed it. And, you know, poor Aaron, man, we had him buried up to his neck in sand, and I nearly put the shovel through his shoulder trying to dig him out on camera.
Jesus, man.
You know, and like, I didn't get home till 1:30 in the morning, so it was literally like a 22-hour round trip.
Jesus.
Yeah. George stayed there overnight, both nights, so that all his stuff was ready. But yeah,
the price you pay for your craft.
Oh man, like it's like what I was saying. You know, I want to create visuals which have like a point of difference with them. I get really stuck if I just want to like make a visual for the sake of it. You know, and that's why. And it was especially hard at a point where I felt so burned out. You know, burnout is like it's definitely a really reoccurring theme for me along these things. I get so over-invested in these projects that by the end of it, I'm just exhausted and like, you know, like micromanaging Aaron to want to post things on social media from my social media calendar that I've created to make sure that the rollout's out. And in the end, does it really matter?
No, but they say if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if you've got a plan in place and you're doing the right thing.
100%. But, you know, like I was so thrilled at what George created and the other video, which Carl Allison did as well, you know, like we've been super good mates for such a long time. He's made numerous videos for me before. He came to New York to film a video for me, you know, like he wanted the whole rap experience and man, he got it.
Which video was that for?
It's for Forever Queens with Starvin' B. Yeah. So we went over and had a bit of a New York rap trip together and he got stuck in a bunch of studios and driving around and
people loved it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I was super appreciative of the efforts that he has like put into, what we've done together over the years. You know, we've done heaps of projects together, but I also feel like I learned heaps from him too, you know, and like watching him develop his craft to the level that it's at, man, is like such a talent.
For sure.
And I feel very lucky to have such friends.
For sure, man. I've actually had the opportunity to hang out with him a bunch since he's been on this show a few times, man. And he's, such a good guy and such a passionate dude about his craft. It's awesome.
Oh, man, he's an absolute weapon. And like when I rang him to do the Let It Be Known video, he was like, no questions asked, let's do it. You know, get him to work within the limitations of what I had to work with. And man, he just pulled out all the stops, man, and brought all the gang together. And I was just like, man, like, you know, every time I do something with him, the like skill level and the attention to detail just jumps exponentially, you know, like,
yeah.
And yet again, man, I can't thank him enough.
He's another one of those creative people that's come out of this sort of, you know, rooted in hip hop and it's gone on to do bigger things. It's awesome. Yeah,
totally, man. And, you know, he's brought me along to do a few things on some of his projects too. I did the title graphics for the Eastfield Exorcism. So just the little simple motion graphics or whatever, but it was like a real moment for me going to the premiere at the Melbourne Film Festival and seeing him and Nick like show his film to like a sold out cinema, you know.
For sure.
Yeah, that was a real moment, man. But yeah, shout out to Carl, man. He's an absolute G.
Good on you, Carl.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about any other film projects that really meant a lot to you?
I'm definitely keen to do more videos, man. If people want to get involved and do some crazy shit,
they can just literally hit you up.
Yeah, man, definitely. Hit me on my Instagram.
That seems to be where it's awesome that we live in a time now where people can just you're one DM away from potentially working with somebody that you've followed for a while.
Oh man, you know, I've had the privilege of working with like heaps of amazing artists. You know, like it was cool to have Cursor come back and want to do another clip more recently. You know, like we started doing a lot of stuff together back in the day. On his second album, I did a lot of his video work and. You know, just out of the blue, he hit me up again on Instagram saying, "Yeah, you want to do it? You want to go again?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Did you see the other day he just posted about how he sampled the most recent Eminem sampled that Abracadabra song?
Yeah.
He sampled it on his first record, I believe, and sort of flipped it pretty similar.
Oh man, he's got to be careful.
So you did a clip for his last records in his last one.
Yeah, it was the last clip that he did.
And so is he on a hiatus, or do you reckon he's done?
Nah, there's no way he's done, man. He's like too about it. You know?
Yeah.
He really loves like we come from really polarizing backgrounds, but I think that's what, when we work together, it's what kind of worked. I was able to look objectively at what he was doing, because I did a whole DVD for him.
Yeah.
With Heater.
Yep.
And I've also produced for his brother. Like before my first album, I produced a whole bunch of songs for his brother and stuff. Rates, yeah. And I think there was like a mutual respect, because like I wasn't like super about the vibe that he was on at the time.
Yep.
But it allowed me to come in and just be respectful and do the job.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I even ended up DJing for him on a few tours and stuff. It was a pretty wild experience.
Yeah, for sure, man. He's got proper crazy fans.
Man, we were doing like 2 shows a day every date of the tour, and the girls screaming, man. I needed to wear earplugs, man. It was like the Beatles or some shit.
It's crazy to think that I'm guessing from where you jumped into Aussie hip hop to the fact now that there is like, stadium sort of stuff happening like that. It's crazy, isn't it?
Oh man, witnessing the Hoods and Pluto play Rod Laver Arena with Symphony Orchestra was definitely like a fuck me moment.
Yeah, for sure, man. I remember early days. I was at the Metro and Cypress Hill were playing, and Hilltop, I think, supported them. And I remember thinking then, this is probably like 2003, thinking, man, you've got Aussie hip-hop guys supporting like American hip-hop, like Cypress Hill. Like, this is crazy. This is like the pinnacle of where it's going to go. We've got a whole thing. And then it just goes...
Oh, man. Yeah, like you wouldn't see them supporting many people these days.
No.
Well, they did the Eminem show, and that was like MCG.
MCG.
Yeah.
Eminem did the MCG.
Yeah. So the Hoods booked me to film that show, and that was intense.
Yeah, wow.
Their manager was like giving me all the instructions on how they wanted it filmed and everything, man. And it was like, I just walked into it thinking, oh yeah, we'll just make another little like tour diary type thing. But they were just like,
yeah,
it's like a level of professionalism that, you wouldn't really experience in this genre if you're not around in that.
You're talking 100,000 fans, man. Like, it's a big level of production.
Oh, well, man, you're not finding any hip hop groups bigger than them in Australia. So.
And were you happy with the result? What did they use it for? Just like for promotion?
Yeah, it was just like to go on. We played them, just document them supporting Eminem. It was cool. Like, I rolled in and I flew a drone over the MCG, but then I got worried about how like big they are, drone licenses around the MCG and stuff.
How long ago was that, man? I don't even remember Eminem playing the MCG.
Oh, probably pre-COVID, probably. Yep. They only like hit me up like a day before, so I just had to like charge all my batteries and throw it on. Let's get it done.
I remember him doing maybe 10 years ago. He did the Rapture tour where he had Action Bronson, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and 360, and him. That was at Marvel.
Nah, this is after that.
After that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's a hell of a lineup, though.
Well, dude, and it's still, I remember seeing that, and I'm like, fuck. Because since then, they've obviously all gone on to do big things, man.
Yeah.
For sure. Crazy lineup.
Yeah, but that was a cool experience, man. A lot of people.
A lot.
Very scary when you're standing on stage.
Yeah, like there's only a handful of people that get to play to audiences that big in Australia. You know what I mean? Like 100,000 type people. No. I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna find it.
I'll link you the video. Yeah,
man. Oh, yeah. You could send me a link to a lot of stuff. That'd be good, man.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, you've made doing my research very easy. I appreciate it.
Oh man, that's what you got to do.
So tell us what else is in store for the rest of 2024, man, or the future. for yourself, dude?
As far as 2024 is concerned,
Bit more home life.
yeah, there's a lot more home life, but hopefully more studio life. Hopefully get to work on a few more projects visually and musically.
Yep.
Let's get these. I'm trying to get these other records I'm sitting on out so I can start something new. I'm real good at starting things.
Yep.
Finishing them is way more difficult.
For sure. But once you start it, you've got to finish it.
I'm definitely keen to get the band back out and do some more shows with 1-6. That's for sure, So we're just trying to work out like an avenue of how we can put on shows without just like recreating the same formula.
Yep.
So that's exciting, but also just like a challenging thought process. So I wanted to like try and create a few shows which verge on other genres. So I think that might be, a bit more of this like live band movement rather than just getting the same. It's really easy for us to fall into these patterns of like we're going to do a show and then you've got the same like 3 to 4 support acts that you generally will choose. And I wanted to try and break that a little bit.
Yeah, push out of the comfort zone because
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a lot of avenue there for evolution, but it's just a matter of like trying to think a bit more laterally.
Well, man, I appreciate you coming in today. It's been an awesome chat on and off camera. We've had a good chat.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'd love to have you come back in again, man. Maybe in another 12 months so we can see how you're going with parenthood and where you're at then.
For sure, man. I would love to come back, man. You bring me in with one of those other idiots that I've hung out with over the last many years, man. I'm sure you'll get some good banter.
Well, that is definitely on the cards. I've got to upgrade my technical setup so I can have multiple guests on and do some more sort of roundtable things where I can step back and have people just chat amongst themselves. I think that'd be really cool.
For sure. And they're not idiots, man. I love them. All of them.
You use the term with endearment.
For sure.
All right. Discourse, thanks for coming in, man.
Man. Thanks for having me, man.
Cheers.
3,000.